everybody, welcome back. We are back. We are so back with another episode of The Shift with Gina. I've been a little bit out of sorts, out of everything the past couple of days. I'm just getting over this little cold that I picked up from my daughter. Luckily, I didn't catch it nearly as badly as she did. I didn't even struggle with a fever or anything like that. It was just the congestion and just sort of feeling tired. You know, that old wives' tale that your immune system is stronger when you're pregnant. I think it's true. When I was pregnant with my daughter, with my first pregnancy, everyone got COVID. My whole family got COVID. A lot of my friends had COVID, and I was the one who had it. Mine was the least intense. I didn't even get a fever with COVID. And now that I caught the cold, my husband caught the cold that my daughter brought into the house. Even my dad is feeling sick too, and I have the least symptoms out of everybody. So I think it's true. When you are pregnant, I think your immune system is stronger. Who knows? I don't know. It might just be a myth, but it's a myth, I believe. We're going to talk today about a trending topic. This is the only thing we're going to talk about today. I want to just get into this a story of Kate Cox in Texas, the mother who is trying to get an abortion for her child, her fetus. It's a fetus. It's also a baby. It's under 20 weeks, but has found to have trisomy 18. So we're going to talk about this case today because it's trending, and I want to shed some light on the ways that the media is lying to you about this case, and talk about how even some people in the pro-life movement are kind of twisting and misunderstanding the information in order to say that we're being cruel to this woman. There's a lot of people online saying that we're forcing a woman to have a stillbirth, etc. And I just think there's a lot of misinformation out there. So this is what we're going to cover today. It'll be the only topic today. We are recording with a guest tomorrow, so that new episode will be out soon as well. I'm not going to announce who it is, but you definitely know who she is. And before we get started, don't forget, this episode is brought to you by the Shift community, my online community of women's health and wellness and all things related to improving your lifestyle and habits. We are hosted on Mighty Network, so you don't need a social media account or a Facebook account to sign up for the group. We do weekly workouts. We have weight loss programs. We have a ton of exclusive interviews there with various health experts on topics like fertility, hormones, nutrition, and there's a lot of exclusive content over there as well that I'm not able to post online on the great world wide web, because I have been, and I will get censored and banned if I continue to post that kind of stuff. So you can see all of that content in the Shift. Link in the description to join. It is just for women. Sorry, guys, but you can share that link with your wife or girlfriend or mom or cousin, friend, whoever, as long as they are female. Okay, Kate Cox. Kate Cox is sort of the center of attention. Let's read the way that this case is presented to us in the media. If you're on Twitter, you probably know the Krasenstein twins. Oh man, these guys are a piece of work. Brian Krasenstein has been talking about the story a lot. Side note, I know two people independently who grew up with the Krasenstein brothers, and it's so funny because everyone who knows them knows that they're paid off by the DNC to peddle all of this information that is very pro-left and pro-liberal, but they frame it as if they're very like reasoned, balanced people, and they post those really annoying tweets where they're like, X, Y, and Z, what are your thoughts? Thoughts? Question mark, because they're all about engagement farming. And they're extremely, extremely liberal. Brian Krasenstein posted this on his Twitter. He said, update, Kate Cox, the woman that Texas AG, Attorney General, Ken Paxton, has refused to allow get an abortion, has fled Texas. Okay, so here's the backstory on this woman. He even shares a photo of her. Backstory. Her fetus, which is under 20 weeks, was found to have trisomy 18, a fatal diagnosis. She then sought to terminate the pregnancy to protect her health and future fertility. A district judge granted the request, but Paxton sought a stay, which paused her ability to get an immediate abortion. Now, Krasenstein says, you have to be a completely evil person if you are preventing her from getting an abortion for political gain. Ken Paxton should be ashamed of himself. Okay, and there's the picture of Kate Cox. So let's talk about what trisomy 18 is. For those of you who have never, if you're not a woman who has given birth before, you've probably never heard of this kind of genetic testing. So trisomy 18 is a disorder in which babies are born with 3 copies of chromosome 18 instead of 2 copies of chromosome 18. For whatever reason it may be, an unknown reason, this accident occurs at the time of conception, and all cells in the body will have this structure. And this is said to be, it's peddled as a fatal diagnosis. And the sort of leading statistic about trisomy 18 is that 90 to 95% of the children with trisomy 18 will die prematurely. And they say, a question is, how long can a child live with trisomy 18? And it says most children don't live beyond the first couple of weeks of life, and fewer than 10% will live beyond the first year of life, typically due to significant heart or lung defects. A lot of things, it's also called Edwards syndrome. The babies have very low birth weight, clenched hands, abnormally shaped head. This is a severe developmental issue that happens with the child if they do survive past a couple of weeks. This is a very, very sad diagnosis for a child in your womb. This kind of testing that you normally get is around, with this pregnancy, I had this genetic testing. I think I may have been like 14 or 15 weeks pregnant when I had it done. It's always very nerve-wracking. Even if you know you're healthy and you deep down, you know that your child is healthy, it's always nerve-wracking to get those tests back. And, you want to make sure your child doesn't have Down syndrome or trisomy 18 or any other birth defect, because it's a tragic thing when you learn that your child has one of these defects. I'm halfway through my pregnancy now, so this story is particularly painful for me because I look at this woman's photo. I look at Kate Cox. She's already a mother of 2. This is her 3rd child. She and her husband want to have more children after this. And my first reaction, which I think a lot of people are lacking when we're talking about the story, is just the humanity behind the story. We have to remember this is a woman, a mom, who is struggling already with a really terrible diagnosis that no mother wants to go through when she's pregnant. It breaks my heart, already pregnant and kind of emotional on all fronts, but this story really, really breaks my heart, because as soon as you are diagnosed with anything like this, as soon as your baby is diagnosed with anything like this, in the conventional medical system, you're automatically in the blink of an eye, you're referred to abortion, termination of pregnancy. The child can't live. Don't let the child suffer. You have to think about your own health too. You don't want your own health to suffer. And you think about how these women are pressured into making these decisions because the conventional medical system is predatory. The abortion industry is predatory. And we have to admit that if we're going to have an honest conversation about abortion, women's health, pregnancy care, postnatal care, you have to be honest about the fact that the conventional medical system is predatory, and it preys on scared women like Kate Cox, women who are fighting to have healthy children, women who just want their children to be safe and not suffer. And the conventional medical system preys on these women. And my heart goes out to her. I think before we do anything, before we make this some big national news story and talk about the politics behind it, I think we all need to pray for this woman. And I don't mean just superficially thoughts and prayers to Kate Cox. I mean, we need to put her in our daily prayers and ask the Lord to guide this woman and to give her peace and wisdom and discernment. And we need to look at her compassionately, because this is a very, very, very sad case. And unfortunately, it is being weaponized into this political fight. So the thing about trisomy 18 is that, like Brian Krasenstein said, it's a fatal diagnosis. That in and of itself is propaganda, okay? And that in and of itself also, it starts to dehumanize the child and make it seem like the child has absolutely no chance at living. And because the child has no chance of living, we should murder the child in the womb. Okay. And so when you're this pregnant, I think she's under 20 weeks pregnant. So she's probably, I think she's about the same length same whatever age in her pregnancy, gestational stage in her pregnancy as I am. When you get an abortion at this stage, it is not a medical abortion. The medical abortion, remember, is when you take the abortion pill. You take a pill, you go home, and you pass the baby. You have to, people need to understand this. When you get an abortion, the baby has to come out. You have to deliver the baby in some way. It doesn't just disappear. It doesn't just go away. So when you're early on in the pregnancy, you can have a medical abortion, which is just you take the abortion pill and you go home, you cramp, you bleed. It's incredibly painful. You have to deliver the child. Even if the child is this small, even if the child is the size of your fingernail, you have to deliver the baby. And there are many, many, many stories of women who have to labor on the toilet, even when they take the abortion pill and they see the fetal tissue coming out of them because that you have to get rid of the baby. That's how abortions work. When you're this far along, it is a surgical abortion, which means that, I hate to even say this, but it has to be said. People need to know the information. It is a surgical abortion in which a doctor takes forceps. They have to manually dilate the cervix, which in and of itself has risks. They have to pull the baby's limbs off of the body in order to make it easier to pull the child out. They have to rip the baby's limbs off one by one. They have to crush the baby's skull with forceps, and they have to pull the child out. And I think they also even have to deliver the placenta at this stage. It's a very violent, very, very violent, brutal, barbaric way to end a baby's life in the womb. The womb should be the safest place for a baby to be. It is the safest place for a baby to be. It's where every baby wants to be. Usually, a lot of times, even when a child is born, the baby doesn't even really want to leave the womb. It's warm in there. They have everything they need. They hear the sound of mommy's voice. It's safe. That's all they know. It should be the very last place where a child meets his brutal death. But this is the kind of abortion that is being pushed on Kate Cox. Okay, so Trisomy 18 is the headline. And a lot of people, even on the conservative side, are saying that we are being cruel because we are, quote, forcing her to have a stillbirth. So, for example, Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter is a very famous conservative author. She has written many different books. She has a column on her website, or she has a Substack, whatever it is. And she is very outspoken about conservative issues. She is kind of a, what's the word for her? She loves controversy. She's, starts with a C. There's another word for her. She's always trying to take a controversial take. Contrarian. She's a contrarian. She tweeted yesterday, "The pro-life movement has gone from compassion for the child to cruelty to the mother and child. Trisomy 18 is not a condition that is compatible with life." If you listen to the information from the conventional medical system, from many doctors who will be interviewed by CNN, who will get online and talk about medicine, they will tell you that it is not compatible with life. That any child with trisomy 18 is bound for death. So why let them suffer? That's their justification. Joel Berry, he's the managing editor of the Babylon Bee. I always enjoy his tweets. He has some family. He has some personal experience with trisomy 18. So he gives a different perspective. So before we even get to Kate Cox's case, because there's a lot in there I want to kind of debunk, which most of it is brought to our eyes thanks to Allie Beth Stuckey. But first, I want to talk about what Joel Berry says. He says he responds to Ann Coulter's tweet about the fact that trisomy 18 is not a condition that's compatible with life. And he says, huge misconception. With care, survival rate for kids with trisomy 18 is over 90%. Last week, I had a family whose daughter has T18 in our home. She's 15 years old, a sweet, happy girl. U of M Hospital is one of the only locations in the nation that will care for these kids. Okay, so not family members, but friends, a family who has a daughter with T18. 15 years old. He says, so Joel Berry continues, he says, the high death rate for trisomy 18 actually includes those who are killed in abortion, which makes it seem like the condition is not survivable. Similarly, the survivability of Down syndrome in Iceland is 0% because they murder them all in the womb. So let's pause right there. This is how you lie with statistics. There's actually a book called something like that. I haven't read it, but there's like a whole book called How to Lie with Statistics. This is how you lie with statistics, especially when it comes to a topic as sensitive and as heated as abortion. So we're told that 90 to 95% of children with trisomy 18 will die. We're told that a high percent of Down syndrome children will die. That is because they include the rates of abortion of these children. Okay, so in Iceland, just like Joel Berry says, in Iceland, they abort 100% of babies with Down syndrome. And the high death rate for T18, it's actually high because people just abort their children that have T18. So Joel Berry continues, he says, T18 babies often need help eating or breathing, and almost all hospitals withhold this from these kids, leaving them to starve or suffocate within 2 weeks. If given care, these babies survive and live happy lives. So you notice here, they end up treating these babies like animals, because what happens when you have a pet that gets really sick? It's actually really sad. My parents' cat, sort of our family cat, as long as I can remember, her name is Minnie. She was just diagnosed with lymphoma, and she has this really, really big lump on her neck that's growing and growing, and it's actually pushed her trachea over to the side. And, you know, she's not doing well. She was only diagnosed about 2 weeks ago, and she's lost a lot of weight. And it's just sad. And my mom always says, I don't want her to suffer. And my husband and I went over there and we held her, and my husband was just so heartbroken at how tiny she's gotten. Because my husband used to work at a vet. He used to be a vet assistant, so he's worked with animals quite a bit, and he couldn't believe how quickly she lost weight. And so the whole thing is, we don't want her to suffer. We want her to, like, you know, we'd rather like help her pass quickly than have her suffer. But that is because, you know, it's an animal should be treated differently than a baby. So with these babies, what they're doing with these T18 babies is they're treating them like animals in the hospital. They're withholding this kind of treatment. They're withholding treatment so they can eat and breathe, so that they don't die, so that they don't suffer, so that they just die. Well, they do actually suffer, so that they just die. That's what they do in these hospitals, because they have convinced the parents that there is nothing worth living, that life is not worth living for these babies, because these children are being treated like animals. It's so dehumanizing. And then Joel Berry also shares a photo of this 15-year-old girl. Her name is Faith. He said they went to look at Christmas lights last week with her. U of M now boasts a 90% survival rate for T18 kids who actually get the care they need. Most hospitals just let them die because our healthcare system has been taken over by demonic eugenicists. Couldn't have said that better myself. He continues, if you or someone you know has a baby diagnosed with T18, don't believe the doctors who tell you it's a lost cause. DM me and I'll connect you with some people who can get your child the care they deserve. He also got in touch with a doctor named Dr. Glenn Green, who has pioneered some advancements in T18 care, published some material on the improved survivability rate. And he's actually going to, I think, publish he's going to publish his response, the response from Dr. Green, who talks about a 90% survival rate with T18 children once they're given the care that they need. So you see how easily they lie with statistics. You see what's happening here. They say that 90% of children will die, but that's because all of those children are not given the proper care, because people automatically just see this entire thing as a death sentence, which is incredibly sad. I also want to share something from Dr. Poppy Daniels. She's a holistic OBGYN. I interviewed her twice, I think, for my women's group. And she's a wonderful doctor who is a hormone expert. She helps she's a practicing OBGYN. She doesn't deliver babies anymore, but she has a lot of patients. She treats patients up until they give birth and obviously after. She's a pro-life doctor, and she is one of the loudest voices online that speaks out against abortion, and definitely, in my experience, the loudest doctor who is pro-life and speaks out against abortion. I love her. I love how fierce she is. She's a mom of 6, and this is what she said in response to Mike Cernovich. So Mike Cernovich is author, filmmaker, lawyer. Love Mike. Huge fan of Mike. There's definitely some things that I don't agree with him on. And he tweeted last night, making a mother carry her stillborn baby to term is how you lose 2024. Then you won't have to worry about compromising. You'll have zero power at all and won't be part of the negotiations. So I disagree with that. And you guys have heard me talk before about how strongly I disagree with this idea that a conservative stance on abortion has made us lose. I think that we've been very milquetoast and we haven't taken a strong enough stance on abortion. So that's not the reason why we're losing. So Dr. Daniels responded to Mike and she said, sorry, this isn't happening. No one is forcing a woman to carry a stillborn. I wish they would interview an actual practicing pro-life doctor for once in their lives. And then she tells a story. Listen to this. She says, I just had a patient this year who carried a baby to term with trisomy 18. The baby was born and lived for 4 hours. Time for the parents and siblings to meet, hold him, and say goodbye. The hospital staff, however, was clearly annoyed by the situation and implied that termination should have been the route they took. There is no reason to preemptively kill these babies. We live in a death culture. Now, you hear that and you say, that's tragic. The baby only lived for 4 hours. Of course it's tragic. That's heartbreaking. I can't even think about that. I can't even imagine what that's like. However, this bringing your baby to term and allowing your other children and your family to hold that baby for 4 hours and say goodbye to him, that is how you treat a child with dignity. Even if the child is not whole, even if the child is sick, even if the child is deformed, even if the child is not going to live and has a low probability of living, this is how you treat human life. You treat it with dignity. You treat it with respect because life is sacred. These babies' lives are worth just as much as our lives are worth. You do not treat these children by going into the womb and brutally killing them because they're going to have a low survival rate. That's not how you treat children. So all of that being said, let's come back now to Kate Cox's story. Now, the way that her story is being presented to the world is that she needs a life-saving abortion. This is a tagline. This is the propaganda, right? And this is the propaganda that's being used for a lot of abortions. They claim that abortion is life-saving. There is never, I can't even say that because I'll probably get banned, but this is why I have content on other platforms, because I can't say things on YouTube without getting, I'm already demonetized. I'm already censored and shadow banned significantly. But they are claiming that her abortion is a life-saving procedure and that Kate Cox's life is in danger. This is actually not true. Allie Beth Stuckey, she is a podcast host, very, very strong pro-life advocate, author. She is one of the leading voices in the pro-life movement. I would say she and Lila Rose are some of the loudest voices online. I appreciate everything they do when it comes to the anti-abortion movement. So Allie Beth Stuckey has done a little bit more digging and research into this case, and she's brought up some of the truth behind this that is being twisted in the headlines. So she tweets, Texas's abortion law has an exception for the life of the mother, which means that the exception in the state of Texas is if a woman's life is in danger, she can receive an abortion. But this woman, Kate Cox, does not qualify for that exception because her life is not in danger. Okay, and this is from the court documents. This is not something that she just kind of guessed. The reason that Kate Cox wants an abortion is because her baby may not live long after birth. And in Texas, that's not a legal reason to kill a child. And regardless of whether it is a legal reason, it's not a proper moral reason to kill a child, okay? The child may not live long after birth. Just like Dr. Daniel's story, that child may live a couple of hours, may live a couple of days, may live a couple of weeks. But that's not a reason for you to kill a child. It's like, if an adult or a 7-year-old child were in the hospital and they were dying, let's say they were dying from a terminal illness or they got into a terrible accident and they were near the end of their life. because they have a low probability of living, does that make it okay for us to rip off their limbs, stab them in the heart with some kind of toxin that's going to stop their heart from beating and kill them? Is it okay for us to do that? Absolutely not. Any sane person would say, no, you can't murder somebody just because they have a high probability of dying in the coming weeks, in the coming days. That's the same thing in this case. So Kate Cox is not seeking an abortion because it's life-threatening for her. She's seeking an abortion because her child is probably not going to live very long after birth. So Allie Beth Stuckey also shares a portion of the court documents showing the Center for Reproductive Rights argument. Now, the very short end of this is her doctors won't say her life is in danger because it's not. The doctors instead say that if her baby dies in utero or makes it to term, they can induce delivery or deliver the child via C-section. Cox doesn't want either of these. This is where it's important to understand this information. This is very relevant to the case. Kate Cox has had 2 previous C-sections with her 2 previous children. Lawyers point to the risk of uterine rupture with induction and the future pregnancy complications that a repeat C-section may present to Kate Cox. Okay. Now this is where it can be twisted to say that Kate Cox's health is at risk. Once you've had 2 C-sections, there are definitely risks for a uterine rupture if you try to deliver the baby vaginally. There's also a risk for uterine rupture if you try to induce, which is what they would have to do if the child dies in the womb. They would have to deliver the child. There's also a risk having 2 previous C-sections. There's a risk that there will be future pregnancy complications if she gets another C-section. There are a lot of factors here to consider. So this is how the media will twist it into saying that Kate Cox's life and health is in danger. Okay, so these risks exist. So the lawyers aren't entirely wrong. However, let's talk about what the risks, how high these risks are. Okay, Allie Beth Stuckey herself, she has 3 children. Her first 2 births were also C-sections, just like Kate Cox. Allie Beth's 3rd baby was born vaginally. It's called a VBAC. Mothers have definitely heard that term. VBAC stands for vaginal birth after cesarean. The chance for uterine rupture during an induction for VBACs is 2%. That's low. Okay. The possibility of future complications due to repeat C-sections, like placenta accreta, where the placenta attaches to scar tissue, is rare, but it does exist, right? So these complications that lawyers are pointing to in the court documents, these risks exist, but they are very low risks and they're very rare things that could happen to Kate Cox if they have to induce her or give her a C-section. Okay. They are greatly exaggerating these risks to make it seem like she must have an abortion. This is what's happening. This is the truth of it. And what they're not being honest about is that there are risks with an abortion as well. The lawyers and the media are painting this case to seem like an abortion is risk-free and an abortion is the only thing that Kate Cox could possibly do in order to save her own life and in order to preserve her health and future fertility. There are risks to abortion, many, many health risks, especially when you are almost 20 weeks pregnant. There are risks for your health, for the health of your uterus, for future fertility. But the lawyers and the doctors and the media are conveniently leaving out these risks. They're only talking about the low risks that come with potential uterine rupture, potential placenta issues. They're only talking about those risks because they want to make you believe that the only possible thing you could do for Kate Cox and her health is to give her an abortion. They're greatly exaggerating these risks. Now, whether or not she would be delivered via induction or C-section, this woman is going to be extremely closely monitored in a hospital setting. And the way that Allie Beth Stuckey puts it, she says the chances of her life being endangered because of these procedures, even in an emergency, is low. That's the truth of it. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't take these risks seriously. This is the thing about abortion is that they make it sound like there are no risks to abortion. There are risks either way. This is what's so sad about this case is that we're forgetting the humanity behind it. This woman is in a very, very precarious health situation. And no matter what route she takes, there are risks. This is why we need to pray for her. We need to be compassionate. We need to present her with an option that is not killing her child, because you're only adding on trauma to that. You're only adding on pain to whatever risks she's already facing with her pregnancy. This is why I do not envy this woman at all. None of us envy this woman. Our hearts should go out to her. Whatever happens, she's at risk. It's just whether she has an abortion or whether she is going to have to deliver early, have a C-section, induce, and try to deliver vaginally, whatever the choice may be. But no matter what, the baby has to be delivered. And this is what people have very little knowledge about pregnancy and birth and postpartum. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, I think the conventional medical system wants us to know very little. They don't want us to know a lot, because the more knowledge that we have, the more empowered we are. And so again, like I said at the beginning of this episode, a lot of people think that abortion just means the baby poof disappears and everything's okay for the mother. No, that baby has to be delivered. So the choice here is either delivering a baby who is intact and treating that baby with dignity and respect, or dismembering the child in a brutal, violent, vicious way and taking out the baby in pieces. Those are the options here. Both come with health risks for Kate Cox. So the choices here, to quote Allie Beth Stuckey, she says, the choices are between holding and loving her or discarding her like medical waste, between dignity or murder. That is really what the choices are here. And unfortunately, this is going to be a very difficult time for Kate Cox, but it will objectively only be more difficult and more devastating and more traumatic for her if she chooses to dismember her own child in the womb, rather than doing everything she can to treat the baby with dignity and treating her like a child that she loves, rather than a commodity that should be killed in the womb. Of course, the state is going to try to protect that innocent life. Any moral state government would do everything they can to protect the innocent life and to ensure that the child is treated with dignity. So although we need to have compassion for Kate Cox, that compassion does not need to turn into advocating for the murder of the child. It's not going to make it any easier for Kate Cox. It's not going to fix whatever risks she's facing. There are plenty of risks if she goes down that route. And so this is how the media lies to you. And it's especially disheartening that a lot of people on the right, voices like Ann Coulter, they're claiming that this is the only way, and that conservatives are cruel. They're calling us the cruel ones for wanting to preserve this child's life and for wanting to, at the very least, just treat the child with dignity. It's a sad day that we've gotten to this point. And I also feel very bad for Kate Cox that her story is being weaponized. Imagine being in her shoes. That's bad enough to face these risks and to know you're already preparing for the loss of a child. But then on top of that, to have your story weaponized and used as this sort of political weapon, political tool to be waved around in the air at each other online on Twitter. It's devastating. And I think it's a really sad thing. And people are like, oh, there's no black and white. There's a lot of gray area, like Brian Krasenstein. They're such like pseudo intellectuals. He's like, not everything is black and white. Like one of the comments on his post was that someone said, it's a sad day when baseless religious beliefs force people to flee their homes. And Krasenstein is like, it's terrible. Not only is Cox going to suffer, but so too will the fetus, which Paxson claims he is protecting. What? You think that, this is what I'm saying, people like Brian Krasenstein, they don't know what an abortion is. You think that baby's not going to suffer even more if you tear his limbs off and crush his skull in the womb? What a violent, vicious, terrifying way to die. Rather than being held in the arms of your mother until your last breath is taken. How would you rather die? I wouldn't want to die by having my limbs ripped out from me. This is just, it's a very sad thing. And this is the state of American media. This is the state of social media. This is the state of journalism. They lie with statistics. They twist the truth to make things seem as though there's something they're not. And this is also very convenient. Look at the timing here. It's almost 2024. These stories are big. They're big flagpoles. What's the word I'm looking for? They're big pillars here on the road to the presidential election in 2024. This will be weaponized. I guarantee you, in every presidential debate, when inevitably they start talking about abortion issues, you will have Democrats who will use the story to make it seem like conservatives are heartless, cruel people who are trying to regulate women's bodies because we like to control women's bodies and their choices. That's how this story will be painted. And that's why this story is being elevated to the point that it is. That's why the Krasenstein brothers are paid to elevate these stories and make it sound like we are cruel religious zealots. And we cannot stand for that. We should not take this lying down. We need to fight for life. We need to tell the truth because there's so much truth about this case that's being hidden. So if you have anyone in your life who's been talking about the story or is asking questions about the story, share this with them. Share this with them so that they know the truth, and that we should all be praying for Kate Cox and that child's life. That child is precious. That child is just as precious as you and I. That child's life is worth just as much as yours and mine. And we need to be praying for the soul of that baby and for the dignity of that child. That's all I've got today, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to be back next time with a guest. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe, whatever to this channel. I'm so shadow banned. So many people don't even see my channel anymore, but we're fighting through it anyway. Thanks, guys. Have a really good one, and see you next time. Bye.